Hey everyone, we've made it to the last objective of the book. Chapter 12, Objective 6. It's a long objective. I have provided a discussion guide, thought guide, if you will, that you could print out. Go along with me here. Um, and the objective is as follows: articulate your beliefs regarding your responsibilities for fostering appropriate student behavior and addressing student behavior problems in positive ways. Describe how your beliefs and actions may influence student outcomes. That objective is, in my opinion, a mouthful. It's a lot of words. But basically, the gist of it here is, what do you think about classroom management, positive and negative? And how do you think your beliefs are going to make a difference to the students? How's it going to impact them positively or negatively? I think that's a big question. I think it's a fair question. Um, Clearly, I think also the objective here is designed to push us a little bit as we reach the end of the book and to get us to really process some of the things we've learned. Um, I'm going to go through a couple of my beliefs to talk about how I feel about things, and then we'll also step through that and go through some questions I've asked myself about this and some things that I've had to process. Um, I've had the advantage, the benefit, and hopefully everyone else has, of being in theory to practice already. And I took theory to practice with Jeff Fink. And so we spent a lot of time on this particular subject. And Jeff Fink was a special education teacher. So many of the things that were in chapter 12 resonated with me because they're exactly what Jeff said in class. And that's wonderful. I mean, to me, that was like a really affirming on a lot of levels. And it let me know if I ended up in a class with students with disabilities, that we would be ready, that I would be ready. And also, in full disclosure, I work basically as a para. We're called an educational assistant. Um, and I work with a second grade boy who has ADHD. And I work with him at least 2.5 to 3 hours a day. And I work with a boy who is ASD, and he's in 11th grade. He's very high functioning, but he has his problems and he locks down and things like that. So I've had some practical opportunities to think about this and some practical opportunities to think about my own problems and my own issues. So let me go through my beliefs here first. I'm going to read them off the paper. Hopefully you have this. Um, my positive interactions with individual students and the class as a whole are unifying force, whereas negative or punitive interactions divide and crush class unity. Talked about this a lot in Theory to Practice with Jeff Fink. Just how being negative, singling students out, berating them, punishing in any way is something that will divide the class. Now, most of us will say, my goal is to have a class that is safe for the kids. But the moment you succumb to punitive action in a way that hurts a kid or makes them feel like they're less, you begin to split the class, begin to make them feel badly. There are some examples in the beginning of the chapter about the teacher having a boy who's being bullied, and the way that teacher handles that situation is going to determine whether or not that continues, because that is beginning to divide that class, and they need to bring that together. And my way of handling it as a teacher is going to determine what goes on. As a teacher, I'm also responsible for positive leadership in the classroom. So it's my responsibility to address student negative behavior, whether in form of immediate correction or general teaching of values like anti-bullying information or expectations of students. So the way that I handle things is going to affect what goes on with the class. I have seen situations where a teacher did not do what was needed in the classroom in form of immediate correction, and the students viewed it as tacit consent. Well, he didn't say anything about it, so it must be okay. And that's simply not the case. Conversely, let's prevent behaviors. Let's talk about, if somebody's rude, that's not bullying. If they do it twice and they're being mean, that's not really bullying either. But if they're doing it to you every day, that's bullying. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about strategies to help you deal with bullying and how to deal with the bullying. And also, let's get to the base of the problem of the bullier. Many times, boys that bully have other problems going on. They feel powerless at some level, and they need to be talked to and discussed with. I can further bring about appropriate student behaviors by having clear communication of class policies, procedures, and behavior expectations. In other words, get your classroom management set up and do what you say you're going to do. If you say, I expect that at the bell everyone is seated and quiet and ready to work, then you need to stick to that. They need to be seated, quiet, and ready to work. And when they're not, there needs to be a word said. You will have your consequences set up for that kind of behavior. You still have to have consequences. We're not saying that that's not the case. It's just punishment's not necessary. Alternating direct instruction, which is a teacher-based approach, with group, peer, and individual exploration, which is a student-based approach, will help students stay engaged and result in fewer behavioral issues. Kids who are involved in their own education and their own learning don't make problems. They want to learn. And if you prove that you're a teacher who's professional, able to take care of their behaviors, able to teach them new things or lead them and guide them, facilitate their learning, they will listen to you and they will behave better. If you're scatterbrained, you're going to have problems. I work with an art teacher that I absolutely love. She's a great art teacher, but once in a while she doesn't have things together quite as quickly as she should. She loses the kids, and that is just kind of part of the situation there. She's very patient. She doesn't mind, but it still happens. Now, questions I ask myself, getting to some of these conclusions, and things I'm going to continue to ask myself. Am I willing to consistently examine my biases or allow others to speak to my biases if they surface? That's important. Are you willing to let someone else speak to your biases? Are you willing to have somebody come in and observe in your class and say, hey, that situation you were telling me about with Johnny, it's not really a situation. Maybe it's you. I'm willing to accept that. I'm human, and sometimes things happen. Some kid will begin to grate on your nerves. Am I willing to examine that and look into it? And are we willing to look at biases from more than one angle? Race, gender, how about social status? Being a white male in having come from a South Midwestern state, I don't have a lot of patience for kids who are purposefully act like country bumpkins. Hey, y'all, what y'all doing? And I sure am smart. They do that on purpose. But I have to be careful with that because there are kids who simply speak that way. Even from where I came from, where my family grew up in southern Missouri, there are people who are legitimately like that. And if their speech pattern triggers me, I have to be careful. I have to watch and say, this is probably just the way they speak at home. Chances are he's going to be a smart kid, but I have to still watch my own trigger and pull that back. You have to do the same. It's very difficult when it's much closer together. I don't have any problem dealing with a Hispanic child or a black child and their social differences because I know they're going to have a different culture than I do. But when culture differences are very similar, that's when it's more difficult. And that's what we have to be careful with. How much impact do I really have on behavior? I hit the internet and I suggest that you do the same. Get on Google and do some typing and find out what you might to answer this question. But I found this really interesting article from a journal at Cambridge, and they did a more scientific study of teacher impact on behavior. Now we all know teachers have an impact on academic learning. This is a given. But behaviorally, this is very interesting. I'm going to read a small quote from there. It's very English sounding. So, Positivity toward their teacher also resulted in students displaying an average of 56% less oppositional defiant behavior, such as argumentativeness and vindictiveness toward authority figures. This was still reduced by 22% up to 3 years later. In fact, the researchers found the beneficial effect on behavior was as strong, if not stronger, than that of established school based intervention programs such as counseling and other anti bullying therapies. So, what that's telling me right there is that my relationship with my students as teacher is going to impact whether or not they become bullies. That's a big deal. And so we need to keep that in mind. We do not live in a social vacuum. And honestly, parents trust their children to us to try to do the right thing. Um, I believe that we are responsible in that area. Um, what should I do to ensure my beliefs transfer to the classroom? How do I get those things that I believe to be part of my daily classroom? First of all, this is a Hamlin favorite, but I believe it's true. Daily reflection, end of day reflection. How did it go? Um, how did that situation go? Why did it go out of control? Am I tired? I may be tired. Um, Shoot straight with yourself and be real. Am I playing favorites in the large class situation? Do I like some kids better than others? Do I like some kids less than others? That's an important question also. And finally, is there a burr in my saddle? That is a euphemism, of course, for is there something under my skin that's just bugging me? It might be something very simple. Some kid has a laugh that just drives you nuts. Too bad. You're a professional. Get over it. You need to recognize that fact, address it, and then move on. Maybe you need to address it with the student. Hey, that's that's an interesting thing you've got going there. Talk to them, get to know them. Once you personalize the person that's doing the behavior, it will go much smoother. Some other things I need to maintain: flexibility. I need to be able to stretch and move. Change my plans if needed. Set up classroom management immediately and stick to it. Again, talk to Jeff Fink if you haven't. If you haven't had him in that class, he will give you some guidance. And remember, all kids deserve to succeed. My beliefs about inclusivity have changed a lot over the last 4 weeks because research like this and other things I'm finding, it's that inclusivity that makes kids want to be a part of the team. They want to be a part of a community. They want to have belonging somewhere. And sure, they can have belonging at home, but often they will want belonging at school too. If they don't have belonging at home, I can guarantee you they will want belonging somewhere else. And why not make it your classroom instead of someplace else? Anyway, it's been a wild ride. We've gone through over 400 pages of text in 4 weeks. And so I hope that that your learns were big and that you have a great break between J term and spring semester. Thanks a lot.